My name is Ed Parsons. I'm Google's geospatial technologist. My responsibilities are largely outreach, so connecting Google to people in the broader community, particularly in the geospatial world, mapping agencies, potential users of geospatial information, organizations where geography is a major part of what they do. Yes, there has been some consolidation. There have been mergers, particularly in the large, more traditional geospatial companies that have been around for decades. But there are also small companies starting up. There's a growing ecosystem of new ventures that are getting funded, that are using geospatial technology as part of an application that's maybe sort of consumer focused, where the geospatial technology isn't particularly obvious. It might be buried behind the scenes, but it is an important part. And I think our industry has become much more diverse. So yes, although there has been some consolidation, I think actually it's a much broader and more healthy industry than it's ever been. I think what we've done, and I think we should congratulate ourselves for it mostly, is we've hidden much of the complexity. And there is still a huge amount of complexity in our business. What we do is complicated. We're dealing with large volumes of data, increasingly managing that information in real time. But what we've done to make it more accessible is to hide that complexity behind APIs, behind toolkits within the mobile operating systems, SDKs, that make it easier for the developer of a ride-sharing application or an application for finding out if there are people that have similar interests to you in the neighborhood. That's easily accessible to them. They don't have to worry about all the complexities behind the scenes. I think it is almost a revolution. Certainly maps are more pervasive. They are something that we use every day, well, at least almost every day. We have this test internally at Google. We ask, is a product passing the toothbrush test? And the toothbrush test is, I use my toothbrush every day, I don't even think about it. Is it the same for your product? And I think with maps we're almost there. Traditionally we've used maps on our phone because we were going somewhere that we're not familiar with. We got directions. But now increasingly people use the Maps app on their phone on their commute to say, I'm going to take this road as opposed to this road, or I'm going to take the bus instead of the train because there were delays on the train. It's something that we are now using on an almost day-to-day basis. We have had a role to play, I am sure, but it has been part of a broader use, I suppose, of geospatial technology on web and on mobile applications. I think the mobile phone, the smartphone, has had a huge impact in making geospatial technology more accessible. I think what we have done and what we try to do is to focus on the user and make use of geospatial technology when it makes sense from the user's point of view. So a tool like Google Maps is obvious, but Google Now on your smartphone, it's using your location all the time in the background to provide you with contextually relevant information. So it will tell you when to leave to get to your next meeting, or it will tell you what the weather forecast is like. It's using location to make information more accessible to you based on where you are, but it's not in your face. And I think that's where we've had the biggest benefit. It's probably true that a lot of the new ideas and the innovations are coming from the consumer market, but we really are standing on the shoulders of giants. A lot of what we do couldn't occur without the work of the national mapping agencies and cadastral agencies and people collecting the very base level mapping which we build services on top of. And if you think about it, many of the products and services that we use make extensive use of GNSS, GPS systems. That's a key component that was originally a professional military application, now has found its way into the consumer space. But we couldn't do what we do without that technology. What's really changed is that there's now a focus that users of mapping products can also be creators. So you can be a consumer and a producer. And the most obvious example I can think of is if you're using Google Maps to navigate between two cities, you're getting driving directions, but you're also at the same time contributing traffic information and making sure that other people who are navigating are getting a sense of the speed. So things that previously would have required lots of capital investment in terms of putting sensors in, other users of the application are now providing that information. So you have that immediate benefit. And in another sense, the ride-sharing applications like Lyft and like Uber are also using location to solve that very fundamental problem of here's a supply of taxis, here's a demand of people wanting to use those, how can we join the two together? And that in many ways has allowed a huge innovation in that particular space. Key is that idea of focusing on your user. Really understand who your user is, what their requirements are, and to try and keep it simple, keep it straightforward. We've always had a very iterative approach to developing software. We were famous for always having a kind of a beta label on the software that we developed, recognizing the fact that the software wasn't complete and that we would start with relatively simple functionality and then add more functionality as time goes on. We release a new version of Google Maps on the web, on mobile devices, perhaps every 2 weeks. So there's a lot of iteration, a lot of processing happens quite quickly. But it allows you to start with a basic product to make sure that product works with your user and then incrementally build more complexity. I think historically in the geospatial industry, we've tried to take a more waterfall approach and put much of the content functionality up front. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and you might have missed something. So I think start small, focus on the user. This is the most exciting time to be involved in our industry. We are embedded in more and more applications, more and more services. There's a bright future in terms of autonomous vehicles being developed. The establishment of delivery drones, all sorts of technology that keeps people excited, are actually all grounded in geospatial. They're all based upon identifying where something is and where it needs to be. So I think we have a really important role in many of the new technologies that are coming online, but we are just a component, and that's fine. We should be happy with that.